Is it pronounced Constantine or Constantine? Because I'm pretty sure in the comics he's always correcting people that it's Constantine and rhymes with fine. But then for some reason, every live action version calls him Constantine. Maybe because the Roman Emperor's name is pronounced like that? And I guess in the Keanu movie it's because they made him American? But the Arrowverse has no excuse. I've always said Constantine because I was introduced to him through that show, so I'm sorry in advance for saying it wrong. I can't get it out of my head. Anyways, this is all a long way for me to say that John Constantine is one of my favorite comic book characters. I rarely get the chance to talk about him on the channel because he still feels like a niche hero, but now nobody can stop me from doing it. He's a fascinating character who, despite having multiple adaptations, still hasn't gotten his time to shine in the mainstream, and that needs to change. The DC Universe's resident tortured exorcist deserves a series where he can finally reach his full potential. I may or may not have wrote this whole script without realizing that I never properly introduced who John is, so I should probably clue you in on what makes him such an interesting character. John Constantine is an occult detective, master magician, con artist, and a fantastic anti-hero. A foul-mouthed, blue-collar, working-class exorcist who stands out by blending in with the general public. Besides the fact that he's the spitting image of Sting, no, not that one. There we go, much better. That must have been a legal nightmare, by the way, but I have to respect a power move like that, just stealing someone's appearance. Sorry, to get back to my point, Constantine is an anti-establishment punk in every sense of the word and is not afraid to let you know it. As honest as they come, almost to a fault, he's more than willing to lie, cheat, and steal his way through life and use magic to do so. He's not someone to take no for an answer, and if he can't get the job done with magic, he'll happily talk his way out of a situation. Or sometimes just resort to a kick to the bollocks. And that rocks. Seriously, he does it so often that he calls it the Constantine kick. Is that not the most beast thing ever? He's as cynical and ruthless as they come, but his deadpan sense of humor makes him incredibly charming and hard to hate. But deep down inside this man, past his cancer-filled lungs, is a soft spot. He's done a lot of wrong things in his life, and at the end of the day, John is determined to do what he can to make this nightmarish world a better place. He genuinely does want to do his right thing, just as long as it fits his own self-interest most of the time. There's a whole world of terrifyingly realistic Constantine stories waiting to be adapted, and I'm so desperate to see them told in a series of his own. But here's the thing. If you're one of the 17 people who actually remember this, he did have his own show at one point. NBC's Constantine series premiered over a decade ago, which physically hurts to say, and introduced us to Matt Ryan's brilliant take on the character. He genuinely deserves to be in the conversation for all-time great comic book casting choices, but because of the show's poor viewership, he never got the attention he deserved. Despite him turning in a show-stealing performance, the writing of the series was, questionable to say the least, and it was abruptly cancelled. Like, to put this into perspective for you, they wouldn't even let this man smoke, despite his inevitable lung cancer being a huge part of the Constantine lore. I can't believe I'm out here advocating for smoking, but John is the exception, okay? He's the only one who should be allowed to. Thankfully, Matt was so good in the role that the Arrowverse brought him back again and again and again. Again! It was a huge testament to how perfectly he embodied John. On top of that, he even got a pretty solid animated film. Not to go off tangent, but I need to talk about this. In said movie, he has sex with the spiritual embodiment of the city of Los Angeles. I don't have a punchline or anything. I just think it's insane that he fucks the spiritual embodiment of the city of Los Angeles. Like, what? What? That's crazy. But the reason I bring this up is because despite all those appearances, we have hardly scratched the surface with Constantine. He's popped up everywhere in supporting roles over the last decade, but we've not gotten the chance to dive deep into his psyche and the twisted world he inhabits. I am on my hands and knees begging James Gunn to fix this and bring him into this first chapter of the DCU. The funny thing is, a Constantine project is allegedly in active development as you're watching this. A sequel to the 2005 Constantine film starring Keanu Reeves was announced and confirmed by director Francis Lawrence as he let everyone know the script was complete. The reason I say it's allegedly in development is because this was in progress before Gunn took over the DCU, and from what I can tell, he's never directly acknowledged the movie's existence. Keanu Reeves confirmed that they had a meeting together, but with how often new DC projects are being announced nowadays, it's not a great sign that this movie hasn't been brought up once. I'm very torn about this because part of me knows people would turn out to see Keanu in anything nowadays, and this could do wonders for Constantine's popularity, but I don't want him to be the main version in the DCU. While I think the 2005 film is genuinely good and pretty entertaining, it's a very poor adaptation of John. I mean, just look at him. Black hair, black jacket, American accent. If I didn't tell you this was Constantine, you'd think I'm showing you deleted scenes from a Matrix movie. But again, Keanu seems really passionate about this character and for years has talked about how much he wants to play him again.
I've always wanted to play John Constantine again. I just love that world too, and I love that character.
As long as it's an Elseworlds movie, I think I'm fine with it, but my one demand is that we get a version in the DCU as soon as humanly possible. It's the best of both worlds as Constantine dominates the mainstream, and we get two versions of the character. One, a final outing for Keanu in the role, and the other, an accurate version of the character that Gunn can finally introduce. And let's be real. If you're gonna name your first chapter of this ambitious universe Gods and Monsters, you kinda need to introduce Constantine. This man effortlessly bridges the gap between those two ideas and could be a central piece of their first overarching narrative if handled correctly. He's someone who casually interacts with the devil and actual God. Not like a Norse god or a celestial being who's basically a god, no, the actual Christian God. Biblical themes are woven throughout every Constantine story, so it would be incredibly fitting to include him in this first chapter. I don't think chapter 1 is going to be dealing with actual gods, more so the symbolism that comes with them, but it would be some nice variety in contrast to have a character who deals with that kind of stuff like it's nothing. He's also someone who does interact with omnipotent and powerful beings like Dream too, so if they wanted to tell a story that leans more into the cosmic nature of the universe, Constantine is your guy. There's nobody better to really drive home the themes of this first chapter than John. But maybe you need someone to focus on the monster side of this chapter. Constantine is the guy for this. My beloved chain-smoking occult detective has dealt with more monsters than anyone in that universe. I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself at this point, but come on, man. It's ridiculously obvious to see how he belongs here. With projects like Clayface and Swamp Thing announced and coming out sooner rather than later, it's clear that the monster aspect of this chapter is going to be a huge focus. A Constantine series feels right at home with this and should have been the first thing Gunn approved. The only reason I feel like he's holding out on this is because I have a strong feeling that John is going to make an appearance in an upcoming project. You see, old Constantine made his first appearance in Swamp Thing number 37 all the way back in the prehistoric days of 1985. I'm sure you can already start putting the dots together, but it would be insane to not include him in that movie at all. He was a major supporting character in the Swamp Thing lore for 3 years before spinning off into the iconic Hellblazer run we've all come to know and love. Or, I mean, probably not everybody has read it, but you know, you should read it. You'll love it. Probably. Even if it's just a brief cameo where Alec comes to him seeking supernatural guidance, Constantine needs to be in that movie. Ideally, the whole movie could focus on the two of them, but I feel like I'm just getting greedy pitching that idea. Test the waters with the character in that movie, and then from there, give him his own series. I swear, if we have to wait until chapter 2 for him to make an appearance, I'm gonna study the dark arts myself and put a curse on this universe, okay? Part of me is saying that because of how much I selfishly want to see him after living what felt like several lifetimes waiting for the DCEU's canceled Justice League Dark movie, but I also think he would greatly benefit this new universe. Okay, I'm sorry, I need to rant about this for a second. Do you know how insane it is that the DCEU had Guillermo del Toro, Academy Award-winning director, signed on to make a Justice League Dark movie, and they just didn't push it forward? That blows my mind. I cannot believe they threw that away, and for what? This Flash movie? Really? That's what you took instead? Oh god, I'm so glad we're moving past that. Admittedly, rebooting the DCEU is a very hard task. We saw how easily the previous one fell apart and devolved into a continuity nightmare, so with Gunn starting fresh, he has a lot on his plate. And I pray every day that the Warner Bros. CEOs don't interfere with his creative visions at all, because I think the overall idea for this universe has been great so far. The main idea seems to be that we're about 15 years in, meaning that this version of Batman has already let several orphan children die as they look to skip origins. Because of this universe being so developed, they don't have time to slowly integrate more and more science fiction elements with each new project like the MCU did. They have to hit the ground running and showcase this universe in all of its glory with a wide range of people representing every corner, and so far they're doing a good job at that. From classic superhero stories like Superman, Woman of Tomorrow, and Booster Gold, to a Sergeant Rock war film, to a Clayface movie, and an untitled Bane and Deathstroke film representing the villain side of the universe, they've got a lot covered. But the supernatural side of this universe is severely underrepresented right now. Sure, something like Swamp Thing dabbles with those ideas, but we need a character like Constantine who can fully dive into this world of magic. Through his own series, we'd be able to explore how magic works in the DCU and view it through Constantine's perspective. He's very much so a working class guy and would offer a different viewpoint on how the general public feels about these phenomenons than someone like Dr. Fate would. Give him a case of the week type show with an overarching narrative and let us go alongside John as he uses his gift and curse to help these people out. It's what the NBC show tried to do but couldn't quite get the right hang of things. It's the easiest slam dunk way to expand on the world building of this new universe and give audiences a taste of what they can expect. I mean, yeah, it'll taste like a bitter alcoholic smoking himself to death, but many are saying that's the best kind of taste. And who wouldn't want to taste John Okay, I've gone a little too far with this metaphor. The point is, let's use Constantine to jump right into the insane and surreal world of magic. He's grounded enough not to overwhelm audiences immediately and can use supporting characters like Chaz, his oldest friend and main form of transportation, as a point of view character to help understand what's happening. As long as he's not Shia LaBeouf again, those were real dark times. Some of you may be wondering, why a show? Why not try making another Constantine movie? Kinda weird to ask that question this far into the video, but there's a very simple answer to that. The serialized nature of a series is perfect for Constantine as it gives us more time to spend with him, which is really needed. With such a nuanced character, you're doing him a disservice only giving him a 2-hour movie to try and figure out what makes him tick. A series would offer more than enough time to introduce him as the wisecracking, bollock-kicking exorcist we all know and love. It'll allow a surplus of very needed quiet moments to show how tortured of a soul he is that you may not have time for in a movie. I want this to be the definitive Constantine adaptation, so we aren't pulling any punches. A series is the only way to properly give him the time needed for a satisfying character arc. Also, if we're talking about doing John right, please stop taking him out of the UK. Every adaptation brings him to the United States, and I feel like you're missing out on half the fun. The Constantine comics are filled with so much commentary on British politics, it is quite an intrinsic part of many of his stories, so to rip that away from him to try and appeal to Western audiences feels so wrong to me. It's a large reason as to why I don't think any of these adaptations have really worked for me. You cannot shy away from getting political with John. Reading the comics for the first time was an eye-opener for me as I saw what he's truly like, and it only made me appreciate him more. I might be a dumb American who had to reread everything twice to understand his British slang, but it wasn't like I was confused. It offered a different perspective on the world and let me see how other cultures and political climates were operating. Not everything has to be so US-centric. It would only benefit this series to stand out from the rest of the DCU if they were to set it in the UK and fully embrace how political of a character John is. Let me see my counterculture king rip into Parliament like the anti-establishment icon he is as he works to make his city a better place. Perhaps the most important thing about a Constantine show, though, is that you just get weird with it. Constantine stories are at their best when they're risky, experimental, and deep as hell. Don't be afraid to do things that might rock the boat or go against the status quo of what a superhero show should be. Like I mentioned earlier, he f***ed a city once! I mean, Christ, there's an issue where he uncovers the dead remains of Santa Claus, grinds him into a powder, and then snorts him. It's so unhinged, and part of the reason why I love this character. He's an absolute freak, and they need to showcase that with scenarios you couldn't see elsewhere. You need to welcome the absurdity and horror that comes with this character with open arms. It's another reason as to why a show works better than a movie, because I don't think you could exactly sell a film on this stuff. But thankfully, you can do pretty much anything on streaming nowadays and they can't stop you. I need Gunn to abuse that idea and go balls to the wall with a Constantine series that doesn't hold back. That brings me to the big question a lot of people are probably wondering, who should play him in this series? I'm never one to fan cast because more often than not, I have no clue who could pull a role off. Sometimes the most surprising actors can kill it, so I usually just sit back and wait patiently, but in this case, I actually have some dream actors for this. The first one is a little-known Welsh actor by the name of Matt Ryan. I don't know if anyone's heard of him, but he played Edward Kenway in the Assassin's Creed Black Flag game. I don't know, I just feel like he'd knock it out of the park. Okay, for real though, I know this is cheating, but his casting is way too good to lose out on, man. He's become the de facto voice for Constantine because of how good he is, and it would be a shame to throw that all away. Plus, only a handful of people actually remember him from the Arrowverse, so I think they could get away with it. But if we had to do a recast, my actual choice would be Dan Stevens. Appearance-wise, he's pretty spot on for a modern Constantine that isn't just stealing Sting's likeness, but more importantly, he has the range to match. Dan is one of the most underrated working actors today, and I think he'd be able to bring John's witty banter to life in really powerful ways. Plus, if you look at something like Legion, it's clear that he's willing to do shows that feel like fever dreams. James Gunn, I know you're chronically online like me and you see everything. If there's one thing I need you to do, it's this. Please cast Dan Stevens as DCU Constantine. Or bring back Matt Ryan, alright? That would be neat. Honestly, if he wasn't already Batman, Robert Pattinson would make an incredible Constantine. Look at that. 3 great ideas from me. Just use one of them. I'm begging, please. Despite spending almost a decade in the Arrowverse and popping up in dozens of animated mediums, John Constantine is a character who has barely gotten his time to shine, and that does not sit right with me at all. He scratches such a unique itch in the superhero genre and is someone who should be getting adapted all the time. I feel like whatever you're looking for in a comic, he has to offer. Whether it be weird supernatural exorcisms or scathing political takedowns, there's a Constantine story for you, and one that needs to be told in a series. Whether it be live action or even animated if you want to bring these dazzling visuals to life in a way that only animation could offer, I'm just desperate to see one of my favorite characters done right. This fresh DCU reboot offers a unique chance to introduce him in a way that's beneficial to the overall story they're telling in this first chapter, and I think it would be a huge mistake to exclude him. The people yearn for a struggling British occultist lying his way through life. Also, not to keep coming back to this, but they don't have to adapt the part where he f***s a city, but I wouldn't say no to it. Okay, you know what, that's enough of me talking about his relationship with a city. Why don't you just let me know down below if you'd be interested in a Constantine series or if I'm the only one. I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, you may as well give the video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'm gonna send us both to hell and there's no going back, alright? I'm giving you one final warning.